Talk to me. Talk to me.
Hello and welcome. I'm Dan Gersten, host of Chatting with History, where you can listen in to conversations I have with some of the most famous characters in the history of Western civilization. And today's guest is no exception. It's Prometheus, a Greek titan who is credited in some cultures with the creation of man from clay and the theft of fire for human use, an act that is said to have enabled progress and civilization. In addition, he is known for his intelligence and as a champion of mankind. So without further delay, let's meet Prometheus. Yassas, Prometheus, and welcome to the show.
Evharisto, Dan. It's a pleasure to be here, and it sure beats hanging around Rockefeller Center in New York City all the time. Though I must admit that during the winter, seeing some humans attempt to ice skate can be pretty entertaining.
Tell me about it. You know, I've seen some pretty dramatic crashes, with many of them caused by people who should never have been allowed to put on a pair of ice skates. Anyhow, for those in our audience who don't have a clue about what we're talking about, let's show them something they've probably seen, time and time again, without realizing it's you. So, let's put up that picture of Prometheus in Rockefeller Center in New York. Oh, yes. There you are. Right under where they light the big Christmas tree every year.
Yeah, that's a real pain. All those tourists snapping away and with flashes going off, that and those sparkly blinking colored lights sure can make it hard for me to get some sleep. And then there's those pine needles dropping. Let me tell you, I can't wait for them to take that damn tree down. And isn't Christmas only 12 days? Damn pagan holidays.
I can imagine. Anyhow, and given that you're accepted as being a myth, unlike some gods these days, why don't you tell us about your origin?
Sure thing. Love to accommodate you humans, whom it is said I created. Supposedly, my myth first appeared in the late 8th century. That's BC. So I guess you could say I'm pretty old. The Greek epic poet Hesiod wrote a poem called Theogony, in which he described the origins and genealogies of Greek polytheism, and it's within this poem that I first appear.
Hesiod's Theogony?
Yes. It's referred to as the synthesis of a vast variety of local Greek traditions concerning the gods, telling how they came to be and how they established permanent control over the cosmos or universe, whose initial state, by the way, is chaos. A dark, indefinite void, considered as a divine primordial condition from which everything else appeared.
Wow. Just like in the book of Genesis, the first book of Moses' 5 books, which basically constitutes the Jewish Bible or Torah. So why don't you tell us about Hesiod's Theogony? Especially as I believe, few today are familiar with Greek mythology. Well, short of seeing far too many versions of Clash of the Titans and other movies related to ancient Greece, with its gods and religions and cults.
Okay. According to Hesiod, out of chaos came 4 offspring. Gaia, who is associated with Earth, Tartarus, a cave-like space under the Earth, Erebus, the darkness within Tartarus, and Eros, or love, which some associate with sexual love, hence the word erotic. Others also believe that Nyx, the goddess of the night, was born out of chaos as well.
Now, it should be noted that Hesiod's version of creation, well, that differs from the Orphic cosmogony, a set of religious beliefs and practices originating in the ancient Greek and the Hellenistic world. In this version, the unaging Kronos, who is the personification of time, and not to be confused with the Titan of a similar sounding name, well, he produced chaos and ether, an elemental representing the bright, glowing upper air of heaven. The substance of light and the pure upper air that the gods breathed. Anyhow, from the world egg, which chaos and ether reproduced, protagonist, meaning firstborn, and from which the word protagonist is derived, well, anyhow, he was hatched. And it is protagonist who is considered the creator of the universe.
Yeah, it can get pretty confusing with all those tales and all these gods and titans and elementals and other beings. Another version has Protagonus hatching from the world or cosmic egg that was formed by Kronos or time, and his mate Anarchy, also known as necessity, and not by chaos and ether.
So, if I hear you correctly, one version has Protagonist the product of time and necessity? Wow, it sure sounds like somebody's clock was ticking in that version.
What? Anyhow, Protagonist, also identified as Phanes, is associated with light, love, power, and thought. He's often depicted as a deity emerging from a cosmic egg, entwined with a serpent, and having a helmet with wings.
Well, I'll tell you what, those ancient Greeks were pretty creative and imaginative. I wonder if Walt Disney was Greek.
Who?
Some guy with a mouse, but never mind. I mean, it's just that those ancient Greeks, well, they wrote some really great copy.
That they did. There are so many traditions and versions, it's as if you need a program to tell all the players.
So, again, in one version, Protagonist and Nyx, or night, create heaven and earth.
Yes. They also created Hemera, or daytime, with whom Nyx alternated going in and out of Tartarus, thus depicting day, turning into night, turning into day, and so on.
This Nyx sure sounds like an interesting character, You really don't hear much about her.
Yeah, she was really something. Again, the goddess of night, thought to be born from chaos, is credited with giving birth to gods and goddesses and creatures associated with atmosphere, day, blame, doom, death, violent death, sleep, dreams, retribution, misery, envy, deception, friendship, discord, deceit, old age, strife, as well as the fates, garden nymphs, and female death spirits.
Wow, a really interesting character for sure. So, back to the story. What happened with Protagonist?
Well, supposedly, he passed his scepter, the symbol of his rule, to Nyx, who passed it on to Uranus.
Uranus?
What do you mean?
Never mind. I was just attempting to be funny.
I fail to see the humor. Anyhow, Uranus is said to have mated with Gaia, and they had 18 children, the first 12 of which were the Titans.
And what were the names of the Titans?
Their names? Surely you remember the Titans.
Oh, sure I do. I mean, it's one of my favorite football movies. I mean, with Denzel Washington and all.
What's a Denzel?
Yeah, forget about it. Different Titans. So let's see. There was Oceanus, Coeus, Crius, Hyperion, Iapetos, Thea, Rhea, Themis, Mnemosyne, Phoebe, Tethys, and Cronus. No, not the Cronus from earlier on.
Good job. Yes, those are the 12 Titans, a primeval race of powerful deities that ruled during the legendary Golden Age, immortal giants of incredible strength and stamina.
The Golden Age? Sounds pretty neat. I guess all was happy in Titanville, huh?
Not really. It seems Gaia wasn't exactly thrilled that Uranus tossed her 6 youngest, 2 different groups of giants, 3 Cyclops and 3 100-handed ones, into the depths of Tartarus. So she conspired to have her 12 eldest kids, the Titans, do in dear old dad.
12 against 1? I mean, that doesn't exactly seem fair now, does it?
Well, out of the 12 Titans, only Kronos, the youngest of the 12, offered to help his mother. So, with a giant stone sickle that Gaia created, he waited in ambush while Gaia lured Uranus to meet with her. Then Kronos attacked his dad, castrated him, and tossed his testicles into the sea.
Ouch. The worst fear of most men. Still, I guess it's better to have your balls cut off than someone go Lorena Bobbitt on you.
Lorena Bobbitt?
Yeah, Lorena Bobbitt, a wife with a cheating husband who decided to D. Johnson him.
D. Johnson him?
Never mind. So, Uranus is now ballless. What now?
Well, Kronos imprisons his dad in Tartarus, and then the Titans and others just have a love fest. Pairing up, getting it on, not using any birth control, and creating a mess of offspring.
Wow, sounds like the first summer of love.
Summer? Hell, they were at it all year long, and for many years, producing kids who then produced other kids.
Quite the orgy, huh?
Wait, you ain't heard nothing yet. One of Nyx's kids is Eris, goddess of discord. Following in her mother's footsteps, her trysts produced beings associated with pain, battles, quarrels, murders, oblivion, fight, lies, disputes, famine, manslaughters, ruin, illness, oaths, anarchy, and disobedient lawlessness, and, for Zeus' sake, story.
Stories?
Yeah, stories. Can you believe it?
Well, given some of the story's siblings, I mean, those stories had to be tales from the crypt. I mean, talk about having happy kids with pleasant dispositions. Not. And imagine having to pay child support for that brood. Anyhow, who else was coupling?
Well, Oceanus and Tethys marry and have 3,000 rivers and 3,000 sea nymphs, including Electra, Calypso, and Styx, all of whom, by the way, have something to do with music. Thea and Hyperion marry and have the sun, the moon, and the dawn. Still, even with all these offspring, the second generation of Titans consisted only of 13 children, 4 of whom were the sons of the Titan Iapetos and the sea nymph Clymene. Let's see, they were Atlas, Menocius, Epimetheus, and yours truly.
So now we know. I mean, if we've been paying some serious attention here, I mean, where you fit into the picture. I mean, the son of the Titan Iapetos and a sea nymph named Clymene, daughter of Oceanus and Tethys. I mean, still, I mean, with all of this stooping, you know, what about Kronos?
Oh, he married Rhea. And what's with this stooping?
Oh, it's a word. A word. I got from Sigmund Freud. I mean, which means the old in and out.
Oh, stopping. Anyway, Kronos and Rhea married and had 6 kids who would eventually be known as the Olympians. In the order of their birth, they were Hestia, Demeter, Hera, Hades, Poseidon, and Zeus.
And what came of them?
Well, Kronos went paranoid over a prophecy that his parents, Uranus and Gaia, had told him that one of his children would overthrow him. So each time Rhea had a baby, he swallowed it up. Now, when it came time for Rhea to give birth to her 6th kid, Zeus, she conspired with her in-laws, who sent her to Crete to bear Zeus, while Kronos was fooled into swallowing a large stone, thinking it was the child.
So, Zeus was saved, and this would be Kronos' downfall.
Yes, but not just Kronos's, as most of the Titans would be imprisoned in Tartarus as well.
What happened?
Well, again, accounts vary. Bottom line is that the 5 children Kronos had swallowed were freed, and they, led by Zeus and aided by the Cyclops and my brother Epimetheus and I, waged a great war on the Titans for control of the cosmos, which raged for 10 years.
Big deal. I mean, the U.S. conflict in Afghanistan is longer. Anyhow, what was the deciding factor in that war?
Zeus finally released the 3 100-handed ones to shake the earth and throw rocks as big as mountains, 100 at a time, at the Titans. In addition, they fashioned thunderbolts for Zeus, while the Cyclops forged Zeus's lightning bolts.
Thunder? Lightning? The way you love me is frightening.
Excuse me?
Never mind. Just a little Eddie Floyd knock on wood. Anyhow, the Olympians have defeated the Titans, and you and your brother Epimetheus fought on the side of the Olympians, though you were both Titans.
That is true. One of the things you need to know is that my name means forethought, meaning I see and think through things ahead of time, a gift which not many seem to have today. Anyhow, I saw that the Olympians would defeat the Titans, and I tried to convince some of the Titans, including my dad, Iapetos, and my brother, Atlas, to join Helios, Epimetheus, and me in fighting on the side of the gods. But it was to no avail. Dad was sent and confined to Tartarus, and Atlas was condemned to stand at the western edge of the earth and hold up the sky on his shoulders to prevent the two from resuming their primordial embrace.
Primordial embrace?
Well, if you remember, it was Gaia and Uranus, the earth and sky, that conceived the first 12 Titans. So, guess it was Atlas's job to keep them apart.
I thought Atlas is holding the globe, not the sky.
It evolved into that perspective. Classical art shows Atlas to be holding celestial spheres and not the globe. Regardless, it's nice that I'm right around the corner from my brother these days.
Yes. I mean, both you and Atlas can be found around Rockefeller Center in New York City. Anyhow, let's talk about those other Olympian gods before we get into your story. I mean, if that's all right with you.
Sure. Again, this beats hanging around Rockefeller Center, even if my brother's around the corner. All told, there were about 18 Olympian gods, including the 6 kids of Kronos and Rheus. Another Olympian was Aphrodite, who was created when Uranus balls were thrown in the sea by Kronos. Anyway, with Hera, he fathered 6: Ares, Hephaestus, Hebe, Eileithyia, Enyo, and Ares. And he sired another 5 through an assortment of lovers, and they included Athena, Hermes, Apollo, what was his name? Artemis, and Dionysus.
I mean, Zeus also had children who weren't fully Olympians, like Perseus, the dude from Clash of the Titans, and Heracles, whom the Romans called Hercules. I mean, he also sired the 3 hours, order, justice, peace, the 3 fates, the 3 graces or charities, and the 9 muses. Plus, I mean, all the other Olympians were engaged in all sorts of sexual escapades.
Yes, and they loved disguising themselves and having sex and kids with humans, once they were created that way. Which is why I, for the life of me, can't see the big deal with Jesus' mom being impregnated by a god. Hell, Olympian gods were doing that all the time with humans.
Yeah, kind of interesting how mythology evolves and gets updated, no? Still, what's with this once they, meaning humans, were created? Weren't there humans?
No, not at the time. As a reward for helping him during the war with the Titans, Zeus permitted Prometheus and I to populate the earth with creatures and men.
Whoa, now. You mean humans and other creatures on earth didn't exist before then?
Nope. You and all men, as well as animals, are here because of us.
Wow. Sure different than the version in the book of Genesis.
A lot of creative license taken back in those days. Anyhow, my brother Epimetheus, or Epi as I like to call him, was tasked with giving all the creatures good qualities like strength, speed, the ability to fly, to stay warm in all conditions, to possess a keen sense of smell, superb cunning and instinct, the ability to live underwater, stuff like that. Only problem was that Epi, Zeus bless his soul, wasn't too bright, and while my name means forethought, his name means afterthought. Guess you could say he was the original Monday morning quarterback. So when it came time to give man some good qualities, few were left, and there were none to make them a match for beasts.
So, what happened?
Well, fortunately for man, Epi begged me to help him, and so I took over the task of creation and considered ways to make men superior. So I created them in the likeness of gods, using clay and water, and then the goddess Athena breathed a living soul into them. Compensating for the lack of great qualities, thanks to Epi, I made men stand upright, to be noble and conscious, and to hold his head high, looking up at the heavens.
Really quite impressive, and I can see some similarities to what's in Genesis. What else did you give humans?
Humans? You mean man, don't you?
Man? What about woman?
There were no mortal women on Earth at the time. They came later, and I'll get into that.
No women? Well, no wonder some believe that in the beginning it was a paradise. So again, what else did you give man?
Well, I passed on to them what Athena had taught me. Mathematics, navigation, astronomy, architecture, medicine, and many other arts.
Leo? Is that you? Anyhow, back to creating man. I mean, you must have been quite proud of your creation.
I was, for the most part. But I felt bad that when man sacrificed animals to the gods, the best portions were offered to the Olympians, leaving little for the people.
Well, I mean, that's the way it is, no? I mean, paying the gods respect?
Well, I didn't feel that way, so I decided to trick Zeus at Mycone a sacrificial meal marking the settling of accounts between mortals and immortals, I placed 2 sacrificial offerings before him. One was a selection of beef hidden inside an ox's stomach, nourishment hidden inside a displeasing exterior, and the other were the bones of a bull wrapped completely in glistening fat, or something inedible inside something pleasing exterior. Not surprisingly, Zeus chose the latter, setting a precedent for future sacrifices that, from that time on, man would keep the meat for themselves and burn the bones wrapped in fat as an offering to the gods.
Well, sort of like you can't judge a book by its cover, and beauty's only skin deep.
Whatever.
Anyhow, we have a saying that it's not nice to fool Mother Nature. And I'll bet that also goes for Father Zeus.
Boy, I'll say. He was pissed, to say the least, especially when he thought I was laughing at him.
So what did he do?
He took fire away from man, shouting, "Let them eat their meat raw!" And then, just to rub it in, and because he's such a poor loser, he added, "Let's see how your man keeps warm in the winter." What a freaking meanie, punishing man because I tricked him.
Does sound pretty harsh.
Yeah, every day I looked down on them, watching them freeze and unable to eat. Finally, I realized I had to do something.
Like what?
Once again, I turned to the goddess Athena. She revealed a hidden back entrance to Olympus, so I could access the palace of the gods. Once there, I lit a torch from the fiery chariot of the sun god Helios, broke off a fragment of glowing charcoal, and hid it inside the hollow of a giant fennel stalk. Blowing out the torch so Zeus wouldn't spot me, I made my way down the side of Mount Olympus, made it to the earth, and proudly gave fire to man.
And how did Zeus, find out what you did?
Well, no sooner had I given the coal to man than he had this brilliant idea to have a combination barbecue and tailgate party. So they began to cook up a storm, and sure enough, those tantalizing aromas drifted up to Zeus's nostrils. He looked down, saw man, all nice and toasty, stuffing his face with cooked food and roasted marshmallows, and he just lost it.
Again, not nice to fool Father Zeus. So what was his punishment this time around?
Zeus had me taken to the highest peak of Mount Caucasus, where I was bound to a huge rock with unbreakable adamantine chains.
Adamantine? Isn't that the stuff Wolverine's skeleton is infused with?
I believe that's adamantium. Still, they were pretty strong.
So, your punishment was to be imprisoned on the top of a mountain?
Zeus isn't that nice a god. Kind of like that Yahweh dude from the Old Testament. Anyhow, each day he had an enormous eagle arrive where I was imprisoned and eat my liver, feasting on it, and man, was that painful.
Each day?
Yes, because I was immortal, the liver grew back overnight, and so the next day the same thing would happen all over again.
Oh, sure sounds Bill Murray's torture in the movie Groundhog Day. Look like child's play.
Yeah, especially when some believe that this went on anywhere from 30 years to 30,000 years. I still have nightmares about it.
Must have been awful for an immortal to receive a life sentence, without a chance for parole.
Well, I did have a chance for parole, so to speak. See, I had information that Zeus was dying to have, or not dying to have, the name of the one prophesied to overthrow him, just as he had overthrown his dad Kronos. Even had his gopher Hermes come to me with terms for release, if I only ratted on the potential usurper.
And did you?
Who, me? I'm no freaking snitch.
Bet that pissed off Zeus even more.
Not really. Old guy was actually starting to have second thoughts. Guess he liked me and admired my uncompromising morals. So he set 2 conditions to my being freed. 1, that an immortal would need to give up their life for me, and 2, that a mortal would have to slay the liver-eating eagle.
Well, I guess those conditions were met, because, we're now chatting.
Duh, you think? Still, I never thought it would happen. First condition was met when Chiron, the centaur, was accidentally shot with a poisoned arrow by Heracles. And rather than live in constant torment and pain as an immortal, he chose to give up his life for me. The second condition was met when Heracles, yep, the same guy, noticed me when he was passing by Mount Caucasus. At the time, the eagle was making a meal out of me. Well, having none of that, he let one of his poisoned arrows fly, and like the name of the Broadway musical, it was Bye Bye Birdie.
And how did Zeus deal with all this?
Well, they were his conditions now, weren't they? Anyhow, he invited me to come and live on Mount Olympus, and all was forgiven. He did keep bugging me all the time for the name of the potential usurper, though.
And did you give it to him?
Nah, what would be the fun in that? Still, I did tell both Zeus and Poseidon to stay away from a sea nymph named Thetis, as her son would be mightier than whomever the father would be. So Zeus had a mortal named Peleus marry her. They had a son, some guy named Achilles. Ha, Achilles. Can you imagine how powerful he'd have been if his dad had been an Olympian?
Anyhow, now seems like a good time to revisit something you said earlier, and that's there were no mortal women. So how did that change?
Well, when I stole fire and gave it to man, Zeus decided to punish them and not just me. So he had Hephaestus craft a gorgeous female out of clay. Aphrodite posed as the model, and when complete, life was breathed into her by either Hephaestus or the four winds. While the gods bestowed upon her unparalleled charm and beauty, her unknown mission was to bring mischief and misery upon man.
And what else did the gods give her?
Well, again, Aphrodite adorned her with beauty, grace, and desire. Hermes, the messenger, gave her cunning and boldness. Demeter taught her gardening, and Athena taught her manual dexterity and to spin. Apollo taught her to sing sweetly and play the lyre. Poseidon gave her a pearl necklace and promised she would never drown. And Zeus, he made her foolish, mischievous, and idle. Plus, Hera gave her the quality of curiosity.
And did she have a name?
Yes, don't we all? They called her Pandora, which means all gifted or the gift of all. She was created to become the wife of my brother Prometheus, and just prior to her being sent down to earth, Hermes presented her with a splendidly crafted jar, or ewer, adorned with wonderful images.
A jar? I thought Pandora had a box.
Perhaps. Regardless, Hermes warned Pandora never to open the jar, which was the last thing you would tell a woman who's given the curse of curiosity.
Yeah, sort of like telling Eve, don't eat from that tree. Anyhow, back to Pandora.
Well, I had warned my foolish brother never to accept any gift from Zeus. However, when Hermes escorted Pandora, who was wearing a silvery gown with an embroidered veil and with flowers in her hair, Epi forgot all the warnings and bought into the story that Pandora was to be his bride and that Zeus bore him no ill will for my sins. Really now, can you believe it?
Well, you did indicate that he wasn't too bright. And it seems that his Johnson just took over.
There you go with that Johnson fellow again. Who's Johnson?
What? Not who. Man's lower brain.
Oh, yeah, that's Johnson. Oh. Anyhow, Pandora settled into married life, baking and spinning and tending to the garden, and playing melodious tunes on the lyre, and joyfully dancing for her husband.
Well, that doesn't sound bad. At least she didn't go shopping.
Yeah, but she was plagued by her curiosity and Hermes' warning. Every day the jar teased, toyed, and tempted her. And when her willpower was waning, she'd hid it from view in a dusty storeroom, which only made the situation worse. Why, she even went so far as to lock it inside a heavy wooden chest, around which she placed chains, dug a hole, and buried it in her garden, over which she rolled a huge boulder.
Well, they say curiosity can kill a cat. In the case of Pandora, it made her a nutcase.
Yeah, she was obsessed with what was in the jar. And so the very night after she had buried it, she stole to the garden, dug it up, unlocked the chest, and opened the jar just to get a peek.
Uh-oh. Bad move.
Quite the understatement. Her teeny tiny peek had been enough to unleash untold evil into the world, including old age, sickness, insanity, pestilence, vice, passion, greed, crime, death, theft, lies, jealousy, famine, and so on. They all flew out to plague humankind from that day on.
Wow. That's quite the bummer. And no thanks to Pandora.
Perhaps. But it wasn't she who put those evils in the box. It was the gods. And it was they who cursed her with curiosity. However, when all seemed lost, one last sprite flew out, caught somehow in the jar. It was hope.
Yes. You know, when all seems lost, there's always hope. Anyhow, you know, we're nearing the end of our show, and there's one more thing I want to touch upon, and that's while you surely are important to the myths and imaginative literature of ancient Greece, you know, any religious cult associated with you, you know, seems to have been limited.
Good. I mean, who wants a bunch of crazies worshiping him like the groupies of some rock band? Maybe a lot of the gods did, but not me. As a result, no temples to me have been found, and only a few sites that could be termed religious were devoted to me. Still, I was an important figure in Roman mythology and not just Greek, and I've had art, literature, and musical works associated with me and my story, including pieces by Beethoven and Franz Liszt.
Well, we've just about run out of time, and I'd like to thank you, Prometheus, for coming on our show. As is customary, any parting words for our audience?
Sure do. It's not every day a creator can talk with his creations and give some advice. First off, let me talk about females. The earliest of religions and mythologies have gods that were female, and they, like Athena and Artemis and Hera, were worshipped, adored, and held in high regard. Then, somewhere along the line, females got a bad rap. And later religions, you know, ones practicing monotheism, this one and only God stuff, well, they ditched the female gods and went the male supremacy route. And then they concocted stories about curious women who get men into trouble, whether it was Pandora bringing evil into the world of men, or Eve eating from the tree of knowledge and getting Adam kicked out of paradise. Well, enough of this crap. It's 2012. Don't you think it's about time men stop blaming all the bad things that happen to them on women? Well, I sure do. But it's clear that many males in this day and age and in many parts of the world don't. They mistreat and abuse women, regard them as property to be owned and sold into slavery, and in one of the most civilized societies today, deny them access to health care and the right to have control over their bodies, their lifestyles, and their lives. Enough already. Secondly, remember that story about Pandora and her jar or box? You know, the one that is said to have contained all the untold evils in the world. Do you ever wonder what hope was doing with all those evils? And maybe why it was last? Well, I do. And the way I look at it is that sometimes hope can be the worst evil of them all. It has to do with the dual nature of hope. I mean, sometimes, when times are especially tough and difficult, and you're feeling really, really low, it's hope that things will get better that keeps us going, being our sole comfort in times of misfortune. The way I look at it, that's good hope. But there's also bad hope, or false hope as some call it. It's when hope plays with you, giving you signs of things getting better, only to snatch itself away with a cold slap of reality. Kind of like being told you can be cured of some disease one day and then told you have just 3 months to live a couple of days later. Yes, sometimes hope, when false, can be the cruelest evil of them all. And maybe, just maybe, it's why hope was in among those evils. So take it from me, one of the earliest tricksters known. Pay heed to hope as often as you can be fooled by her. And lastly, many ancient societies and cultures had mythologies about gods and goddesses. These deities were idolized, and there were cults all over the place worshiping this god and that god. Gods for the home, gods for the harvest, gods for fertility, gods for war, loads and loads of gods. And here we are in 2012, and most of these ancient gods are no longer worshipped. Hell, many people don't even know their names. Yet during the times in which they were said to have ruled, they were as powerful and as revered as is the God of today. Still, we now recognize these ancient gods as mythology. So isn't it ironic, and perhaps amusing, that the god of some nomadic desert people 5,000 or so years ago is still regarded as real and the one true God? I'll tell you, he sure had one hell of a publicity firm. Just saying.
Words of wisdom from Prometheus, a titan said to be the creator of man, bestowing upon man the wisdom and characteristics of Athena and other Greek deities. So until our next Chatting with History, this is Dan Gersten, hoping that my hope for a better tomorrow isn't a false hope. And reminding all of you that regardless of your mythology, keep the faith. Thank you for watching.
Talk to me. Talk